What's good, people? Agent Juice reporting for duty. Today's video is about how I love Steven Universe. So I figured it would be appropriate to do a speed paint of Peridot, who is, by the way, best gem. Much like my factually correct opinion of Wuya being the best waifu, you are free to have the opinion that any other gem on the show besides Peridot is the best gem, but you must understand that you are once again factually incorrect, and you know what? That is your cross to bear. Now, I know that Steven Universe is one of those cartoons that has a vitriolic fan base. So before we go any further, I want to make this statement. I believe in the separation of church and state. What I mean by this is that I believe in separating the art from the artist, and, more relevant to this topic, the work from the fan base. I will not be addressing controversies from the show or the fan base whatsoever, because honestly, I want nothing to do with it. And even if it weren't a dumpster fire, I probably wouldn't even give a shit anyway. I am not someone who's willing to sacrifice my enjoyment of something to the whims of people who don't really have my best interests at heart anyway. I just like enjoying things free of harassment from nut jobs and the fun police. So, now that we have that out of the way, let's get into it. So, my first exposure to Steven Universe was seeing a promo pic using some of their older art design. And it was kind of marketed as like this, oh, it's a plucky boy and his magical girl friends, you know, gallivanting about and kicking ass. And if any of you know me personally, you know that I love my ass whooping. So, it piqued my interest. But despite that, I kind of really didn't watch it at first. It wasn't until I was in grad school that I started kind of watching it on the side. And at first, it was one of those shows that I only paid a little bit of attention to, but I watched it because it was, as they say, comfy. It was nice and fun. It was lighthearted. I liked how Pearl is a spaz, how Amethyst is fun, but also a slob. I liked Garnet. Garnet at the time, by the way, was my favorite gem because, you know, she's super chill and all that, and I liked that. And Steven, you know, he was just this hyperactive boy who likes to eat food, and I like to eat food too. So we had a kinship, if you will. So when the show started evolving, I started to pay a little bit more attention to it. At first, it was the introduction of Lapis Lazuli in that mirror episode where she's trapped in the mirror for 1,000 years, because it was starting to introduce this idea that there was more to the story. Like, you know, gems were actually this alien race from a far-off galaxy. And I started to realize, oh, I think there might be a little more to this. So I started paying a little more attention to it, because it was becoming a real story. And then came the introduction of Peridot. And here's the funny thing. Peridot was not one of those, you know, love at first sight kind of characters for me. When she was first introduced at the time, she wasn't my favorite gem. That still went to Garnet. She was, you know, because she was this faceless villain, and she was kind of generic scheming. So I really didn't get into her. And it wasn't until the episode where Jasper comes into the story, and they had that whole thing, you know, they revealed that Garnet was a fusion, and Peridot is now stuck on Earth, and Peridot's redemption arc. That is when I really started liking Peridot, and that's when she was solidified as my favorite character on the show. You know, that's when not only I started really liking her, I really started liking the show. And at the same time, that's when the show started becoming a little more polarizing to me. I now have what I like to call a love-hate relationship with the show. And yes, I know I'm talking about hatred on an I Love video, but you know what? It's my video, and I'll hate if I want to. So, the good and the bad that was introduced to the show with Peridot's redemption arc would be the fact that the good part was Peridot's evolving character, like her adjusting to Earth, and we, the audience, learning about the Gem War. That was the good. To this day, it still is the good. It's the juicy bits. Unfortunately, they also started introducing more of the human stories, the side, you know, filler with all the people on Beach City. And honestly, that's kind of irritating. I'm not really interested in those stories. And unfortunately, Steven started becoming a little less endearing when he started being a little more bleeding heart than kind of made sense in the character. And I think honestly, the gems are more interesting than the humans, even Steven. You know what I mean? The only human I really like is Greg, because Greg's a bro. Anyway, to kind of narrow down the gripes I have with the show, I would say that the first gripe, and I guess this goes into my gripe with Steven, is the crying. You know, like the overuse of crying. Now, I'm not saying that you got to mask your emotions and everything, but when you start having so many emotional breakdowns, it weakens their impact. It starts to dilute their effectiveness. And this is what I mean. There was an early episode called Too Many Birthdays, where Steven realizes that gems don't celebrate their birthday, so he's trying to play catch up with them. And throughout the story, I guess he starts going into an existential crisis or something, and because he's half gem, he can technically control his aging. So he starts rapidly aging himself. And this is like on accident. He's not really meaning to rapidly age himself, but because it's tied to his emotions, he's starting to be affected by it. And there's a scene where he starts getting really, really old and he's about to die. And of course, Pearl is having a full-on breakdown. She's blubbering, she's crying. Amethyst is also kind of crying too. But the moment that struck me the hardest is when Garnet, this stoic monolith of a character, she turns away and covers her face, and then she looks up for the briefest of moment, and you see a single tear roll down her cheek. That had more emotional impact than all the snotty crying and blubbering in the entire series put together, because it was unexpected. It was reserved for a character who normally has her shit together. And in that one moment, she broke down just slightly. And that was beautiful. So let's move on to the good, shall we? I mean, this is an I love video, so I might as well say what I love. The gems. The whole gem thing is intriguing and fascinating. You know, I love their way of life, this rigid class system that they're all trapped in, how they treat each other based on the type of gem they are. It's this perfect oppressive regime that breeds this great story of, oh, let's all be unique and love each other. And yeah, I'm saying that facetiously, but it works well because of what they're establishing with this incredibly rigid lifestyle that they live in. You know, because they're gems. They are hewn from stone. They are rigid. And the concept of the fluidity of change is probably terrifying to them. And at the same time, it being terrifying, it must be fascinating. I mean, hence Rose Quartz. You know, her whole thing with falling in love with her and all that, you know, good shit. A great example of this is the Human Zoo episode. You know, where the crew, you know, Steven and the gems have to go to the human zoo to rescue Greg because he's been kidnapped. And, you know, you see these humans and they're all like, you know, nice and lovey-dovey, and they've never known anything beyond their nice coddled little utopian society that has been engineered by these gems that watch over them. And, you know, I can imagine these gems who have to watch over them. You know, some of these gems probably are kind of angry that they have to babysit these humans, but I can totally see one of these gems like aggrandizing humans the way we do dogs. You know, you can totally see one of the gems saying, oh, I love humans. You know, all they ever do is love you. They never fight. And they're nothing like violent gems who oppress and, you know, conquer. And, you know, the irony of the situation being, of course, that humans on Earth are absolutely terrible. You know, we're all just evil, conquering bastards who want nothing more than to, you know, murder each other for our own personal gain. And, you know, let's be honest here. Dogs are all great and lovable, but that's because we have coddled and genetically engineered them through breeding to be that way. If you go out in the wild, wolves are not friendly, okay? They will tear your ass up if it means their survival will be preserved. So that was a really fun insight into how gems kind of view lesser creatures, if you will. And this is why I want to see the gem stories and not the human stories. This is the juice that I want, man. This is what I'm curious about. This is what I love. When they have the episodes where we get to see more of the gems, I'm all in. The second thing I love is the subject of the speed paint, Peridot. Peridot alone, I think, is enough to keep me coming back to this show. I have this belief that the most interesting character on the show, or I should say at any given time, is the one going through the most turmoil. They are the one that should get the most screen time. With turmoil is conflict. With conflict is the need to resolve the conflict, and that is drama, and that is story. And Peridot, especially during her redemption arc, exemplifies this better, I think, than any other character on the show. Because when she's first introduced, she's mysterious, she's dangerous, she has these strange gadgets. But we soon see that they aren't part of her. These limb extensions, I think she calls them limb enhancers. They are, her blaster, they are her rocket boots, they are what give her her power. And when she stripped of them, she is stripped of her identity, and she becomes this afraid, spastic, neurotic little mess. And I just love that. It is fascinating to see her go through that. How everything around her is new and scary. Everything is a weapon. The toothbrush, the toilet. She is freaking out here, and I love that. She's basically like Pearl in her neurosis, but she does it better. Her conflict feels a little more rooted, because I think Pearl's neurosis comes from her Rose crush, and that's all backstory, so we're not seeing it unfold. We're seeing Peridot's crisis of life unfold before our eyes, and it just drew me in. And I love how as she starts adapting to everything, she has this manic energy, this enthusiasm in which she attaches herself to things, like her tablet that she eventually gets, and how Amethyst was a royal bitch and stealing that shit and throwing it out into the ocean. And yes, I know that's what it took for Peridot to discover that she has, magnekinesis, magneto powers where she can control metal. But still, that was not cool. Not cool. Not cool, Amethyst. Tisk, tisk. All right. So she warms up to Earth, and she's experiencing this cycle of change of how gems fall in love with Earth because she's allowed to change. She's breaking out of her rigidity, which is, as I said before, the more interesting story. And because of this, she mimics Pearl a lot, but ends up being the superior version of Pearl. So when she says she's superior to Pearl, she's right. So yeah, despite the show's flaws, I keep coming back to it. It doesn't have to be the most perfect thing on television for me to enjoy, So instead of diving into this cesspool that is the internet hate of things, I would rather just, pick and choose what I enjoy and just focus on that. And spend my time drawing best gem. Alrighty. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for today. So you guys know the drill. You can hit that like button, that subscribe button, that bell ringing, and then I guess whatever new stuff they'll throw down there in the future. If you guys want to check out the Teespring shop, once again, I always provide that intro video, which has the link in it because of the whole YouTube algorithm nonsense. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know this subject, since it involves Steven Universe, might be a tad more touchy than the stuff I usually do. So, but I still kind of want to hear what people have to say. I believe in the open market of hearing people's opinions on stuff, even when they're factually incorrect. Alrighty. You guys take care. I hope you guys stick around, and until next time, deuces.